Okay. Good afternoon or good evening, baseball fans. Big Al here on this Monday, June 1st, 2026, and welcome to a look at the Major League Baseball standings through Sunday, May 31st. And I'll also tell you how each team did the past week and who their opponents are this week. And at the end, we'll look at the playoff races in both the American and National Leagues. So, strap in, here we go. What's up, Anna and Model Lorianne? How you guys doing? Alright, we're going to start off, as always, in the American League East, which is led by the Tampa Bay Rays, with a record of 36-20, 21-6 at home, 15-14 on the road. 262 runs scored and 243 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 19. They won their last game and they are only 5-5 over their last 10 games. And it was a pretty so-so week for Tampa as they went 0-3 against the Orioles at Camden Yards, being outscored 26-10. And they won the series 2-1 at home against the LA Angels, despite being outscored in that series 21-16. So it was a pretty bad week for the Rays, going 2-4 with 26 runs scored and 47 runs allowed. This week, they'll be playing 3 at Tropicana Field against the Detroit Tigers Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then they go down to Miami for 3 with the Marlins Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In second place, you have the New York Yankees with a record of 36-23, presently a game and a half behind the Rays. 17-9 at home, 19-14 on the road. 305 runs scored and 207 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of plus 98. They won their last game and they are 6-4 over their last 10. The Yankees had a good week. They went 3-0 in Kansas City against the Royals to begin and closed it out, winning 2 out of 3 in Sacramento against the A's over the weekend. And in the Kansas City series, New York outscored the Royals 21-4. So for the week, they finished 5-1 with 46 runs scored and 20 runs allowed. They will be in the Bronx all week long, playing 3 with the Cleveland Guardians Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and 3 with the rival Boston Red Sox Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Toronto Blue Jays hanging on to third place in the East with a record of 29-31. They are 9 games behind Tampa, 17-13 at home, 12-18 on the road. 244 runs scored and 251 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of -7. They've lost 2 straight games and they are 6-4 over their last 10. Alright. They won the series against the Miami Marlins to begin the week, going 2-1, and they split the 4-game set at Camden Yards against the Orioles, 2 games on both sides. The Blue Jays closed the week with a record of 4-3, with 30 runs scored and 31 runs allowed. Alright, this week they will face the Atlanta Braves down at Truist Park Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for 3 games. And then they return home to the Rogers Center for 3 games with the Baltimore Orioles Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The aforementioned Baltimore Orioles are in 4th place. They have a record of 28-32. And they had a pretty good week. They swept the first place Tampa Bay Rays at Camden Yards 3-0, outscoring Tampa 26-10. And then they split the 4-game set with the Toronto Blue Jays, winning 2 and losing 2, and outscoring Toronto 21-18. For a 5-2 week, they end up with 47 runs scored and 28 runs allowed. Alright, They're hitting the road within the AL East this week, beginning with 3 games at Fenway against the Boston Red Sox Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by 3 north of the border with the Toronto Blue Jays Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And sitting last in the East are the Boston Red Sox at 25-33. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the Orioles numbers. They are 10 games behind Tampa. They are 19-15 at home, but only 9-17 on the road. 275 runs scored and 313 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of -38. They've won 2 straight games, and they are 7-3 over their last 10. So they closed out May on a high note. The Red Sox, meanwhile, are in last place at 25-33, 12 games behind the Rays. 9-19 at home, 16-14 on the road. 231 runs scored and 236 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of -5. They've won 2 straight games as well, and they are 4-6 over their last 10. Alright, it's been a mixed bag for the Red Sox this week, losing the series at home to the Atlanta Braves 2-1 and being outscored by just a single run. But they did win the series in Cleveland against the first place Guardians 2-1, outscoring the Guards 21-9. They finished the week 3-3 with 37 runs scored and 26 runs allowed. Alright, this week they're staying within the division as well. They have 3 games at home with the Baltimore Orioles Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and 3 games in the Bronx against the New York Yankees Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Moving on to the American League Central, the Cleveland Guardians are hanging on to first place with a record of 34-27. 17-14 at home, 17-13 on the road. 249 runs scored and 248 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of +1. They've lost 2 straight games, and they are 5-5 in their last 10 games. Last week, the Guardians lost both series against the Washington Nationals in D.C., losing 2 out of 3. And then coming home and losing 2 out of 3 to the Red Sox. They finished the week 2-4 with 17 runs scored and 39 runs allowed. Alright, this week they're on the road all week. 3 games in the Bronx against the Yankees Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by 3 in Arlington with the Texas Rangers Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Alright, one of the hottest teams in baseball right now sits second in the Central. That's the Chicago White Sox at 32-27. Just 1 game behind the Cleveland Guardians, and with the same number of losses as the Guardians. Chicago is 20-11 at home, 12-16 on the road, scored 275 runs, and allowed 267. That gives them a run differential of +8. They have won 5 in a row, and they are 7-3 over their last 10. And they were cooking this week, taking 3 of 4 from the Minnesota Twins, where they outscored them 27-10, and then sweeping 3 from the Detroit Tigers, where they outscored them 13-5. So a very good 6-1 week for the Chicago White Sox, where they scored 40 runs and allowed 15. The White Sox will also be traveling this week. They start the week with 3 against the Twins in Minnesota, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then it's off to Philadelphia for 3 with the Phillies Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Minnesota Twins are in 3rd place. They have a record of 27-33. They are 6.5 games behind the Guardians. 15-14 at home, 12-19 on the road. 275 runs scored and 296 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -21. And they are ice cold. They've lost 5 straight games, and they are 4-6 in their last 10 games. Alright, and this was a rough week for the Twins as compared to the White Sox. Minnesota did lose to the White Sox in Chicago, 3 out of 4. And then they went to Pittsburgh and got swept by the Pirates, finishing the week 1-6 with 27 runs scored and a whopping 52 runs allowed. And they'll be in the friendly confines of Target Field all week, with 3 against the Chicago White Sox Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, followed by a 4-game weekend series with the Kansas City Royals, which begins Thursday and runs through Sunday. Alright, the aforementioned Kansas City Royals are in 4th place with a record of 22-37. They are 11 games behind Cleveland, 15-17 at home, 7-20 on the road. 221 runs scored and 280 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of -59. And talk about ice cold, the Royals have dropped 6 straight games and they are 2-8 over their last 10. And they got the dreaded double sweep this week, as they were swept at home 3-0 by the New York Yankees while being outscored 21-4. And then they went to Arlington and got swept 3-0 by the Texas Rangers, where they were outscored 22-10. So that equals a 0-6 week for the Royals, where they scored 14 runs and allowed 43. Alright, this week they're hitting the road for 3 in Cincinnati with the Reds Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, followed by 4 big games in Minneapolis against the Twins Thursday through Sunday. And sitting at the bottom of the Central are the Detroit Tigers at 22-38, 11.5 games out of first. At this juncture, the Tigers are tied for the worst record in all of baseball, 14-14 at home, and a Major League worst 8-24 on the road. 223 runs scored and 262 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -39. They've lost 4 straight games, and they are 2-8 over their last 10 to cap off what has been a disastrous May for A.J. Hinch and the Tigers. And it continued last week as they dropped the series to the LA Angels 2-1, and then got swept 3-0 at Wright Field against the Chicago White Sox, posting a 1-5 week with only 16 runs scored and 30 runs allowed. And they've got a tough week ahead of them to start June. They have 3 in St. Pete against the Tampa Bay Rays Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then they return home for 3 against the Seattle Mariners Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And speaking of the Seattle Mariners, they are your new leaders in the American League West with a record of 31-29. 17-15 at home, 14-14 on the road. 255 runs scored and 225 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of +30. They've won 6 straight, and they are 8-2 over their last 10 games. And they swept both of their opponents last week, taking all 3 from the A's in Sacramento, outscoring them 22-4. And then coming home and sweeping 3 from the Arizona Diamondbacks, where Seattle outscored Arizona 15-9. That's a 6-0 record with 37 runs scored and only 13 runs allowed. And this week may be a chance to pad their lead in the West. They host the New York Mets for 3 games Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then they go to Detroit for a 3-game series with the Tigers Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Sacramento A's had a tough go of it last week as they lost first place in the division. They sit at 28-31, 2.5 games behind Seattle, 11-17 at home, 17-14 on the road, 252 runs scored to 286 runs allowed. That's a run differential of minus 34. They lost their last game and they are very cold, 3-7 over their last 10. And I mentioned the Sacramento A's had a rough go of things this week, getting swept at home by the aforementioned Mariners, being outscored in the series 22-4. They would then lose 2 out of 3 at home to the New York Yankees, where they were outscored 25-16. So all told, the A's had a record of 1-5 with 20 runs scored and 47 runs allowed. Alright, this week the A's are hitting the road for 3 with the Cubs at Wrigley Field Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by a 3-game weekend series with the Astros in Houston, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tied for second with the A's are the Texas Rangers at 28-31, also 2.5 games behind the Mariners. 15-13 at home, 13-18 on the road. 237 runs scored, 230 runs allowed, puts them at a run differential of +7. They won 3 straight, and they are 4-6 in their last 10. And it was a hot and cold week for the Texas Rangers as they dropped 3 of 4 at home to the Astros, but then turned it around at Kauffman Stadium, sweeping all 3 games from the Kansas City Royals, finishing the week 4-3 with 36 runs scored and 35 runs allowed. Alright, they got a quick road trip coming up. 3 at St. Louis with the Cardinals Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then they're back home to host the Cleveland Guardians for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In 4th place, you have the Houston Astros with a record of 27-34, but they are playing a lot better. They are currently 4.5 games behind the Mariners, 13-16 at home, 14-18 on the road, 271 runs scored, 304 runs allowed. That's a run differential of minus 33. They lost their last game and they are 7-3 over their last 10. And they've done very well this week, winning 3 of 4 at Arlington against the Rangers, but then losing the series at home to the Milwaukee Brewers 2-1. So that should be a 4-3 record, not a 2-5 record. The Astros scored 38 runs last week and allowed 23. This week they'll be at home at Daikin Field with 3 against the Pittsburgh Pirates beginning Tuesday and running through Thursday. And then they'll host the Athletics after that, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in a 3-game series. Sitting in last place, the LA Angels, 23-37, 8 games behind Seattle. 12-16 at home, 11-21 on the road. 255 runs scored and 306 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of minus 51. They lost their last game and they are 6-4 in their last 10. Alright, the Angels began the week winning 2 of 3 from the Tigers in Detroit and then losing the series to the Tampa Bay Rays down at Tropicana Field 2-1. So they finished the week 3-3 with 38 runs scored and 27 runs allowed. This week they'll host the Colorado Rockies for 3 games, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then they play part 2 of the Freeway Series with the Dodgers up at Dodger Stadium, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's a look at the American League. Let's jump over to the National League, and we'll begin in the East, where the Atlanta Braves became baseball's first 40-game winner. They are 40-20 on the season through May 31st, 17-10 at home, real good on the road at 23-10. 316 runs scored and 207 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of plus 109. They did lose their last game, and they are 6-4 over their last 10 games. All right, the Braves won both of their series on the road. First taking 2 of 3 from the Red Sox at Fenway Park, and then closing it out, taking 2 out of 3 in Cincinnati versus the Reds. Now, they were outscored in the Boston series 16-8, but they did outscore the Reds 17-11. So that equals a 4-2 record for the week, with 25 runs scored and 27 runs allowed. This week, they will play host to the Toronto Blue Jays, the American League champions, for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by 3 with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and this is going to be the return of Marcell Ozuna to Atlanta since signing with the Pirates in the offseason. The Washington Nationals have moved into second place. They are 31-29. 9 games behind the Braves, very distant second place. 12-17 at home, 19-12 on the road. They lead the majors with 324 runs scored, but they did allow 323, which gives them a run differential of plus 1. They've won 2 straight games, and they are 6-4 over their last 10 games. And the Nationals won both of their series as well, taking 2 of 3 from the Guardians in Cleveland, and then followed up by winning 2 of 3 at home with the San Diego Padres. So the Nationals also finished with a 4-2 record, with 36 runs scored and 21 runs allowed. Alright, they have 3 more at home with the Miami Marlins Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then it's off to the desert for 3 with the Arizona Diamondbacks Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In third place, you have the Philadelphia Phillies with a record of 30-29. They are 9.5 games behind the Braves, 14-16 at home, 16-13 on the road. 230 runs scored and 256 runs allowed. That's a run differential of minus 26. Philadelphia lost its last game, and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Alright, they started the week off sweeping the Padres in San Diego 3-0, and then finished up this Southern California road trip going 1-2 with the Dodgers in Los Angeles for a 4-2 record. 17 runs scored and 19 runs allowed. Alright, this week they get the San Diego Padres again, this time at Citizens Bank Park for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by 3 with the red-hot Chicago White Sox Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The New York Mets are in 4th place with a record of 26-33, 13.5 games behind Atlanta, 15-15 at home, 11-18 on the road. 239 runs scored and 252 runs allowed. They sit with a run differential of minus 13. They have won 4 straight games, and they are 5-5 in their last 10. Alright, the Mets did lose 2 of 3 at home to the Cincinnati Reds, but they did sweep the Miami Marlins at Citi Field after being swept by the Marlins in Miami last weekend. So the Mets finished the week 4-2 with 33 runs scored and 25 runs allowed. Alright, the Mets are about to embark on a West Coast trip, starting with 3 against the Mariners in Seattle, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and 3 with the Padres in San Diego, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the aforementioned Miami Marlins round out the NL East with a record of 26-34, 14 games behind the Braves. 18-15 at home, but real bad on the road at 8-19. 250 runs scored and 279 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -29. They lost 5 straight games and they are 4-6 over their last 10. And this was a rough week for the Marlins, as they lost 2 of 3 to the Blue Jays in Toronto and got swept in New York by the Mets, finishing the week 1-5 with 19 runs scored and 37 runs allowed. Alright, their road trip wraps up in the nation's capital with 3 versus the Washington Nationals Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they're headed home to host the in-state rival Tampa Bay Rays for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Alright, moving on to the National League Central. The Milwaukee Brewers are still the leaders here at 35-21. 19-11 at home, 16-10 on the road. 268 runs scored and 194 runs allowed gives them a run differential of +74. They won their last game and they are 7-3 over their last 10. And the Brewers had a near flawless week, sweeping the Cardinals at American Family Field, I should say. And they did outscore the Cardinals in that series 13-2. Then they went into Houston and took 2 out of 3 from the Astros, where they were outscored by 4 runs, 13-9. They finished the week 5-1 with 22 runs scored and 15 runs allowed. So not a lot of offense from the Brewers this past week. This week they're playing all 7 days against NL West opponents, beginning with a 4-game series at American Family Field with the San Francisco Giants Monday through Thursday. And then they hit the road to Denver for 3 with the Colorado Rockies, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The St. Louis Cardinals are hanging on to second place. They are 31-26, 4.5 games behind the Brewers. 15-14 at home, 16-12 on the road. 247 runs scored and 257 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -10. They won their last game and they are 3-7 over their last 10. And the week did not start off good for the St. Louis Cardinals, as they were swept by the Brewers in Milwaukee, being outscored 13-2. But they returned to Busch Stadium and won 2 out of 3 from the arch-rival Chicago Cubs, who we will be talking about shortly. The Cardinals finished the week 2-4 with 14 runs scored and 25 runs allowed. Alright, this week they'll be at home at Busch Stadium, beginning with 3 games with the Texas Rangers Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then the homestand concludes with 3 games against the Cincinnati Reds, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Pittsburgh Pirates and the Chicago Cubs are tied for 3rd place in the Central, both at 32-28, and both 5 games behind the Brew Crew. The Pirates are 18-15 at home, 14-13 on the road, with 301 runs scored and 270 runs allowed. That gives them a +31 run differential. They've won 3 straight games and they are 6-4 over their last 10. The Cubs, meanwhile, are 18-11 at home and 14-17 on the road. 284 runs scored and 265 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 19. The Cubs lost their last game and they are 3-7 over their last 10. Alright, the Pirates and Cubs did play each other in Pittsburgh last week and split the 4-game set, 2 wins on each side. The Pirates then would sweep the Minnesota Twins 3-0, while the Cubs lost the series in St. Louis to the Cardinals 2-1. So for the week, the Pirates were 5-2 with 45 runs scored and 36 runs allowed, while the Cubs were 3-4 with 31 runs scored and 32 runs allowed. Alright, the Pirates will be hitting the road this week, starting off with a 3-game series in Houston with the Astros Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by a 3-game set in Atlanta with the Braves Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Meanwhile, the Cubs will host the Sacramento A's for 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by a 3-game set with the San Francisco Giants, also at Wrigley Field, and that is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Cincinnati Reds round out the Central with a record of 30-28, currently 6 games behind Milwaukee. 15-14 at home, 13-14 on the road. 256 runs scored and 288 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of minus 32. They won their last game, and they are 6-4 over their last 10. Alright, so the Reds won their series with the Mets at Citi Field 2-1, but lost the series at home to the Atlanta Braves 2-1, of course winning the finale on Sunday. The Reds finished the week 3-3 with 27 runs scored and 25 runs allowed. This week they'll be playing the Missouri teams. 3 at home with the Kansas City Royals Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, followed by 3 with the Cardinals in St. Louis Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we'll see how they do with the Missouri teams. Alright, we've now made it to the National League West, still led by the Los Angeles Dodgers. The 2-time reigning World Series champions have a record of 38-21, 20-11 at home, 18-10 on the road, 314 runs scored and 185 runs allowed, which is the fewest in baseball. That gives them a major league leading run differential of plus 129. They won their last game and they are 8-2 over their last 10 games. Alright, the Dodgers swept all 3 from the Colorado Rockies to start the week. And then to finish the week, they won 2 of 3 from the Philadelphia Phillies, finishing the week at 5-1 with 40 runs scored and only 17 runs allowed. Alright, this week the Dodgers head to Phoenix for 4 games with the Arizona Diamondbacks Monday through Thursday, and then it's back at home for part 2 of the Freeway Series with the LA Angels Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's a 3-game set. In second place, you have the San Diego Padres with a record of 32-26. They are 5.5 games behind the Dodgers. 16-16 at home, 16-10 on the road. 227 runs scored and 233 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of minus 6. They've lost 2 straight games and they are 3-7 over their last 10. Alright, it was a rough week for the Padres as they dropped all 3 games to the Philadelphia Phillies at Petco Park, being outscored in that series 10-3. And then they went to DC and lost 2 of 3 to the Nationals, being outscored 18-13. The Padres closed the week 1-5 with 16 runs scored and 28 runs allowed. They'll be playing the NL East all week, starting off with 3 against the Phillies at Citizens Bank Park Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So this is the return series from last week. And then they return home to San Diego to host the New York Mets for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In third place, you have the Arizona Diamondbacks with a record of 31-27, 6.5 games behind the Dodgers. 18-10 at home, 13-17 on the road. 264 runs scored, 256 runs allowed. That gives them a run differential of +8. They've lost 3 straight games, and they are 6-4 in their last 10. And speaking of return series, the Diamondbacks had one against the Giants up at Oracle Park in San Francisco, where Arizona swept the series 3-0. The Diamondbacks are now 6-0 this year against San Francisco. But they followed that up by going to Seattle and getting swept 3-0 by the Mariners, finishing the week 3-3. 25 runs scored and 24 runs allowed. They start a big homestand this week with 4 against the LA Dodgers Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by 3 with the Washington Nationals, baseball's highest scoring team, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The aforementioned San Francisco Giants are in 4th place with a record of 23-36. They are 15 games out of first behind the Dodgers. 12-16 at home, 11-20 on the road. 232 runs scored and 280 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -48. They won their last game and they are 3-7 over their last 10. And this was a rough week for the Giants, getting swept at home by the Arizona Diamondbacks and then headed to Denver. They lose the series to the Rockies 2-1. So they finished 1-5 for the week with 37 runs scored and 38 runs allowed. This week, the Giants are playing a 7-game road trip, beginning with 4 in Milwaukee with the Brewers Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, followed by 3 with the Cubs at Wrigley Field Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And rounding out the West, you have the Colorado Rockies at 22-38, 16.5 games behind the Dodgers. 12-16 at home, 10-22 on the road. 251 runs scored and 334 runs allowed. That gives them a run differential of -83. They lost their last game, and just like the Giants, Colorado is also 3-7 in their last 10. Alright, so they got swept by the Dodgers in LA to start off last week, but they came home and beat the San Francisco Giants 2-1, finishing the week 2-4, with 32 runs scored and 52 runs allowed. They allowed 24 in the 3-game set with the Dodgers and 28 in the 3-game set with the Giants. This week, the Rockies are headed to Anaheim for 3 games with the Angels Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And back home at Coors Field for 3 with the Milwaukee Brewers Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Alright, we'll wrap this up with a look at the playoffs. And as it sits entering June 1st, the Tampa Bay Rays are still the number 1 seed in the American League at 36-20. The Cleveland Guardians are the number 2 seed at 34-27. And the Seattle Mariners would take the 3 seed with a record of 31-29. As for division leaders in the National League, it's stat quo. The Atlanta Braves are the 1 seed with baseball's best record, 40-20. That's followed by the Dodgers in the number 2 spot at 38-21. And the Central leading Milwaukee Brewers in the 3 spot at 35-21. And now looking at the wild card picture, as it sits right now, the 3 wild card teams would be the Yankees at 36-23, the White Sox at 32-27, and the Blue Jays at 29-31. The Athletics and Rangers are both a half game out. The Orioles sit 1 game out. The Twins are 2 games out. The Astros are 2.5 games out. Then you have the Red Sox 3 games out. The Angels 6 games out. The Royals are 6.5 out. And the Tigers are 7 games out. On the National League side, your 3 wild card teams as of right now would be the Padres, Cardinals, and based on tiebreakers, the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are actually tied with the Cubs and Pirates for that 3rd wild card spot, but they have a higher win percentage than Pittsburgh and Chicago. So that gives Arizona that number 3 spot. The Reds and Nationals are only a game out. The Phillies are a game and a half out. Then it drops off. The Mets are 5.5 games out. The Marlins 6 games out. Giants are 8.5 out. And the Rockies, as we go into June, they are 10 games out of a wild card spot in the National League. And that will do it for the Major League Baseball standings through May 31st. The playoff races, plus how each team did the previous week and their upcoming opponents. Alright, for my television fans on the channel, stay tuned for episodes 37 and 38 of Television Station History. They'll both be out this week. We'll look at WCIU TV in episode 37, followed by main PBS station WTTW in episode number 38. So make sure you join me for both of those. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next Monday for another look at the Major League Baseball standings. Peace out.